Good evening. It's 1 a.m. my time over here. My name is David Bissett. I'm going to be talking to you guys about WordCamp Things tonight. Just to give you a quick rundown, we're going to be briefly talking about submitting talks, but everything else in the next 45 minutes is going to be for organizers and attendees of WordCamps and events. You can find out more about me by going to davidbissett.com. I have been involved with WordCamp Miami for the past 8 years in lead organizational roles, and that's pretty much the gist of what you need to know about me. Tonight, it might be kind of like an emotional opposite of what John Jacoby's talk. It's not going to be something that's going to be sugar-coated too much. Most of the feedback I've pulled from other organizers and sponsors. You'll see that in a few minutes, plus my own 2 cents on some topics tonight. And a lot of this is opinions, suggestions. So some of the information tonight might not even apply to you, or you might not even agree with it. Oh, that's my disclaimer. So, and also probably very, very minor spoilers to Stranger Things. So I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names, places, things, ideas, or emotions. So let's start off with chapter 1. In this chapter, we are going to be talking about a few questions that I get a lot when I talk to people at WordCamps, speaker submissions. So let's first review a few points, probably the top 5 points. I think, as I've been WordCamp Miami speaker coordinator for a couple of years, off and on. So these are the top things that whenever somebody asks me for some advice, this is what I give them regarding sending speaker submissions to WordCamp Miami and WordCamps in general. Let's see here. I'm just making sure people can hear me. Okay, great. All right, so the number one thing I think is submit multiple applications, but use discretion. So what that means is that WordCamp organizers love to see a submission from more than one person, but that doesn't mean go hog wild. Typically, think of typically I like to see maybe up to 4 or 5 is nice, but anything more than that, things tend to get overloaded from the WordCamp sponsors. They tend to look at it kind of oddly, in my opinion. At least we do. So try to submit two speaker submissions. Oh, and I'm probably going to get better at talking as I move on here. It is 1 a.m. All right, so phoned-in applications. A lot of times we get phoned-in applications, meaning somebody copy and pasted, and there is no indication why your talk would benefit the community. You tell a speaker organizer that will get you far in the process usually, especially if it's the right fit. Take rejection well. Hopefully speaker organizers will get back to you if you were not selected. And if you were accepted the prior year at the same WordCamp, realize organizers might be trying to keep things fresh. Talk about what you know, even if it's basic. don't try to pretend or don't try to learn a subject as you give a talk on it. That's usually not the greatest of ideas, with a few exceptions. And doing talks at the last minute is sometimes will win probably popularity contests, but I tell you that even if a speaker submitter or a speaker judge or WordCamp organizer doesn't say it out loud, that is a mark kind of on things. So anyway, some people do it anyway. So how to improve your speaker selection process. So this is, we're shifting now to WordCamp organizers or event organizers. We're going to go through some steps here real quick. So one is do a pre-WordCamp survey. So WordCamp surveys help to figure out what specific topics your local area is interested in, broadly speaking. So this info, the survey, you could post on your website or send it to your meetup. It's a good idea to get some basic facts on that. And if you want, I can share with you a pre-WordCamp survey my WordCamp Miami does sometime after this talk. And don't just sit back and wait for speakers to come to you if they are, if you do send out or release a speaker call. Be proactive. So that means look to local meetups, look at the minority groups in your area, the technology groups too. Do some footwork. Don't just sit back and let the speakers come to you, because if you do that, you may not get the diverse selection you may think you want, or actually what you know you want. The more diverse the speaker submission tool, the better chances your speaker lineup will be diverse in itself. And don't forget to think of younger or older speakers as well, if you feel there's a way that they can, you know, give back to your local area in the form of a talk. And speaking of which, don't look out, I mean, do look outside the WordPress bubble. So Drupal and Joomla and JavaScript and all those other, you know, those related communities in your area that, you know, not directly tied into WordCamp, or you may think that are, you know, don't belong there. Well, they do have a place, because we're all pretty much in the same, we're all in the same open source boat, or the PHP boat, or whatever. And there's no shame in asking other people in other communities to give the same talk they've given in their own community. It's actually easier for them, and it's less effort, so they might say yes. So here we go. Oh, don't worry about keynote speakers. A lot of times I talk to young or first-time WordCamps, and the first thing they want to do is find a keynote speaker. I'm not from the school that says, hey, you need to have a keynote speaker with every WordCamp. In fact, WordCamp Miami doesn't have any keynote speakers because we don't feel they're actually needed, and except for some rare exceptions. So I'm not saying keynote speakers are good or aren't great, but don't worry about them, especially in the early rounds of speaker submission. Usually the better keynote speakers will come to you, or it'll be apparent in the speaker submissions that you get. And speaking of which, respond to all speaker submissions, even if they're rejected. Let them know as soon as possible. It's common courtesy. And you don't have to provide them a novel about why their submission wasn't accepted. You can give some broad general responses, just, or if there was anything in particular that you noted that might give them some advice, but at least respond to them and let them know they were considered. Also look to your meetups for speakers as well. This is probably the first place you should look if you are, especially if you are a new WordCamp. Most WordCamps are local events, so you know you should try to get the majority of your speakers to be coming from your local area, which hopefully means that you have a good, thriving WordPress meetup, and hopefully should be looking there first and encouraging those people that are giving talks there to be able to give talks at their WordCamps as well. So those are just some really, really quick tips. I wanted to turn over my presentation to Aaron Jorban for a few minutes. He had a great blog post about WordCamp personas and how that can factor in, or his example for WordCamp US might be something that other WordCamp organizers with their speaker submissions may want to take a look at that. And Aaron, if you want to jump in real quick and explain the process, that'd be super fantastic. Or maybe not. I think he froze. Not him, his computer. All right, well, no problem. I think Aaron was just pulling a fast one anyway. It's probably all that dancing he did, but let's see. We'll see if we can get him back on in a second. So those were some general rules, suggestions that I had, and a lot of organizers share regarding trying to submit your speaker talk and how to improve your speaker selection process. So let's move on to chapter 2, and if we can get Aaron back, we will. So this chapter is regarding some quotes that I got from other WordCamp organizers, and hopefully we'll be able to get some lessons learned from some of these quotes. Let's see. All right. And by the way, these chapter statements just refer to places in Stranger Things. They don't really, I just picked them randomly, so don't try to hurt yourself thinking too hard about why I picked these.
So I'm working now if you want to jump back. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, wait. All right. Now we're going. All right.
All right. Thanks.
All right, Aaron, I first wanted to thank you. I know it's been a long time since you've been at WordSesh. Thank you for coming on and joining me.
Thanks, David. So David talked about a blog post that I see Misner already shared in the room. Thank you. Essentially, the idea is this, and people that have seen any of my WordCamp talks over the last year or two know that I'm a huge fan of finding influences from different areas. So for instance, like in a lot of the dev work that I do, I look at science fiction. I look at Atkins' laws of spacecraft design, and try to find like inspiration there for like, you know, how should I try to do things? When I have helped WordCamps in the past, helped organize, one thing I found is actually looking at user experience as a way to influence it. And one of the tools for user experience is personas. And so last year, the WordCamp US team, they ended up all being crazy busy at one of the worst possible times, which is about a month and a half out, which is when you need to have your speaker grid done. Ideally earlier, but you know, they were running a little late with everything. So they asked me, because they knew that I had done it for WordCamp New York in the past, to kind of help. And so I said, sure. So I had not selected any of the talks. Basically, I was given a list of all of the talks and a list of, you know, the grid that was, you know, empty other than, you know, Matt's going to go at this time for the State of the Word. And so like, it was a little more challenging. You know, I'd like to have done this earlier with the selection, but what I did is I came up with a list of personas. So personas are kind of like, you know, what we think people are that are using our product. And they're designed to be real. They kind of give a face to our users so that we can think about our users' problems. And for this WordCamp, I came up with about 10 personas. Just to give you an idea of how people ended up recognizing themselves in it. Amy Lane actually pinged me and said, you know, you have a persona named Amy that basically is me. And I was like, not on purpose, I promise. All the names are from Doctor Who characters. But like, you know, that was kind of the idea of, you know, being able to basically, people could see themselves. You know, I could see myself in one of these personas. I looked at, to develop these, I kind of looked at, you know, the attendee list. But I had been to, you know, at this point, 20, I've now been to 31. I forgot how many WordCamps I've been to this year. 27-ish WordCamps at that point.
God, I hope you're getting frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, of course. And so I, you know, had an idea of who goes to WordCamps. But like one of the great things, you know, in my eyes, all meetup organizers should be active in their local meetup communities, because you can then use your meetup as a tool for understanding your users. The people that come, every couple months, the people that come every month, talk to them, learn, like, why, who are you? One of my favorite things to do at WordCamps, especially at lunch, is to, just go and sit with random people, and, just kind of ask them the questions. So why are you here? What do you use WordPress for? And you're able just to meet, and understand, WordPress a little better, because I know that, like, I'm going to spend most of my time probably talking to my friends. I'm fairly introverted in that regard. I'm horrible at meeting new people. Almost every person I've met in the WordPress community is because someone else introduced me to them at some point in time. I don't know if there's anyone that I just walked up to and said hi that, like, ended up becoming a friend. So, like, trying to get out there and just talking to other people is hard for me, but I do it a little bit. So these personas really helped. And so, like, the goal was kind of, all right, how do we make sure that, every talk session, people are interested in something. But at the same time, how do we balance that with, like, we don't want people to be, wanting to go to, like, all three talks. We don't want to, like, be like, instant FOMO every single hour. That's not really any good either. You also don't want to, there's a situation WordCamp Boston a couple of years ago, and there were, Andy Nason was giving a talk, and a guy, Gregory Cornelius, who's an amazing developer, were giving a talk at the same time. You can guess which one people went to. They went to see the lead developer of WordPress, not, the guy who they didn't know name. So Gregory, I ended up watching his talk later on WordCamp TV, gave a tremendous talk that 5 people were in attendance for because, bad scheduling. Putting a lead developer against any sort of, like, heavy dev talk isn't really fair in most instances. And, things like that. So, like, just trying to balance it out. So these personas kind of give you, instead of thinking about, like, is this a user talk? Is this a developer talk? You're able to say, like, this is a talk that Claire and Amy would really want to go to. Rose might want to, Jack might want to, Donna has no interest in it, and Martha, has no interest in it. And you kind of just get a better sense of it.
Right. So, did you use this at? Have you used this before? I think you said you used it at WordCamp US, right?
Yeah. So WordCamp US, and then also WordCamp New York, the year that I helped organize it. I also ran a tiny event called Cocktail Camp, which was a small, cocktail conference. We used it for a similar thing for a talk selection there, yeah. So, I mean, we don't have that much time, but I at least wanted to get your opinion of how do you think you went, or how effective do you think was it in both those instances? That's hard to judge, like, because, unless you really, like, are surveying with the question of, like, did you feel like there were talks you missed out on that you wanted to attend? It's not an easy thing to do. You kind of just have to listen to people to find out, like, did it work? Being in the hallway, seeing what people are tweeting about. Like, I'm sure everyone that, has been to a number of WordCamps has seen tweets of, oh my God, I can't believe that, this slot has these 3 people in it at the same time.
Yeah.
I know for the New York one, I actually purposely put, like, Nason and Chris Lemon at the same time, because they were giving such radically different topics. Yeah,
people literally almost tried to split themselves in 2.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, I don't know if I would do that again. At the same time, like, actually, I probably would, because if it's radically different topics, then it's not really, like, you're not going to get the heavy devs that are going to go to most Chris Lemma talks. And like a lot of end users, you know, if Nathan's doing an advanced topic, aren't going to get a whole lot out of it. Whereas they might get a whole lot out of Chris's talk.
Okay, well, that's yes. Oh, what's that? Oh, yes. My superiors are telling me through my glass window that our time is up.
Okay.
I do want to thank you very much, and I want to encourage people. I really think this is a great idea, and this is something actually I'm seriously going to be bringing to the WordCamp Miami organizers as well, as far as something to try. And I'll definitely blog that experience when that time comes. I urge any WordCamp organizer, especially speaker coordinators, to check out Aaron's blog. I think it's the August 15th blog. I'll post the link. I'm sure the link's probably already in the chat room. Want to thank you for your time, and we want to see you back very soon at WordSesh.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, sir. All right. Now, as you can tell by the sound of my voice, I've got a lot more coffee in me. Aaron gave me a little bit of instruction here. So we're going to move on to the next chapter. We are now moving away from speaker tips, and we're going to be going deeper down the rabbit hole. Okay, this is where my audio skills begin to drift. All right, so basically what I did was I asked a few WordCamp organizers to give me some quotes or some stories that they could relate and we could learn from. So first I asked me. One of the things that he said, what lesson you like to learn from WordCamp as an organizer? It was when I couldn't make the first WordCamp because two major highways, I-95 and 595, were shut down. So I couldn't make the first few hours of my own WordCamp. I was lead organizer. It was the first day. I got there, I think, 2 hours late because my home was 30 minutes away. So my lesson is from this, unless you're really close to the WordCamp venue and you're the lead organizer, stay at a hotel. Just or find some place close that you can crash at that's close to the venue, because you never know, especially in Florida or many metropolitan areas, how the traffic is going to be like. So anyway, another person who gave me a story was Jen Dumont. She talks about WordCamp Paris in 2015. She's apparently they had 2 days, but they had to change to a second venue on day 2, and she told me basically they didn't factor in logistically everything that you had to move. So there was a lot of stuff to move, and at the time there was the Charlie Hebdo massacre, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So not only was that hassle going on, but there was also a new venue with high security, and moving the stuff was just really a pain in the butt. So the moral of this story is that, first of all, no matter how many things you can anticipate, there's always potential for problems you can't anticipate. And I think the other lesson we can learn here is that if you're dealing with 2 different venues over a weekend, think of work out the logistics of that and just make sure you got yourself covered there. Sometimes we don't think about the in-between stuff or what needs to be moved from venue A to venue B, and Jen surely passed that tidbit of knowledge over to us. Alex Vasquez for WordCamp Los Angeles 2014, he basically had an encounter with someone who just didn't basically want to vacate the room in the venue. Apparently it was a professor, became upset, talked to the lead organizer, and he had a few nasty words to say to her. But Alex told me about this experience, and then he finished off with saying that the experience helped make sure that we were triple sure that items like that were covered in the following WordCamp. And what he means is that, making sure the venues were very directly communicated that they had access to the venue. And, I've been involved in organization for 8 years, and there's always something that happens during a year that makes you feel like you need to double or triple check yourself the next year and the year after that. And it's always something different. But the important thing to remember is when you get into it, I've seen this before, when you get into maybe high stressed situations with people physically in an event, always remember to keep your cool when you're dealing with these people, even if you're 100% right, because that's going to be important in the end, and you want to make sure that you still leave a good impression. You're not burning down bridges with any venues. Another strange story, I asked Ryan Sullivan to give me a strange story, and he did not disappoint. Basically, he related me a story where an attendee at LoopConf last year didn't book a hotel room, and then he arrived at the venue still with no accommodations. And this was a place, there was no other hotel in the area. The hotel the venue was at was sold out. So this person was creating a kind of like a bizarre borderline harassment when after the after party, going around to random people asking if he could stay at their stay in their hotel room. But I've actually seen this. This is not something that is a one-time event. I've actually seen in my years as an organizer, every once in a blue moon, someone will come to your event from outside the local area, and they don't have accommodations. I'm not really sure what their mentality is on this. This is crazy. But the best thing that you can do is just have a list of alternate locations prepared, and you can have them available at your registration desk. And of course, you'd have them on your website as well. And then hopefully this person will learn next time to, you know, find an accommodation before they get to your city, maybe. Like I said, this is kind of weird. So another thing that's kind of weird is a few people show up at WordCamps when you're completely sold out for weeks, and yet they still want to purchase a ticket to get in. You begin to wonder how they heard about the event and how they could have missed you were sold out. But long story short on this one, well, this is kind of up to the discretion. What I do personally, it kind of depends on the on how much we think we've been sold out. I have actually turned people away at times, and various times during the event, especially if it's early on, asking them to come back tomorrow because we really book sold out. We really sell out WordCamp Miami pretty well. So there's only we only give ourselves very little buffer room in that regard. But it is a weird story, and no other WordCamp organizers have encountered this before. And you know, think what you will as to the reason behind that. So I thought that was an interesting story. And another weird story for WordCamp organizers. I have to admit, some people I have been a witness to more than one occasion. It's rare, but it's still more than one occasion where people have gotten upset if they don't think they get a t-shirt for whatever reason. Either they're late to the event or the t-shirts are handed out later, not at registration. And some people have actually upset that they don't get an extra t-shirt if other people get extra t-shirts. I don't know, it's sad but true. Maybe it's Florida, or I've actually seen it outside of Florida, so maybe it's not an isolated case. But my advice, I've seen what happens best in my circumstances, WordCamp Miami circumstances, is pass out the shirts at registration or as early as possible, because it's, especially if you have a larger crowd, it's easier from a logistical standpoint. Now, I guess if you have very large WordCamp crowds, you know, that's you may have to find another or a way to do it, but just as long as you let attendees know ahead of time, so you don't have that one random person that begins to get upset because they can't get a $10 t-shirt. So anyway, I saved the best story for last. Here we go. I got to read this one verbatim here. So at WordCamp LAX one year, and this is from Alex Vasquez again, we had a speaker who wanted to promote his business by handing out condoms, and he was a men's father's right attorney. We asked him not to, and we were relieved he easily complied. Okay, well, I don't know what to say about this one. I had a few jokes ready, but there's child themes present. So, however, I do want to keep, my advice is to keep a watchful eye as organizers, as people that promote things at your event, either by passing out flyers or, you know, doing what I would call unauthorized promotion. If you see someone doing this and you don't take care of it or nip it in the bud, you will see more people doing that next year. And obviously this is not fair really to your sponsors, and it's really, you know, it kind of cheapens the event a little bit if anybody's can pass out flyers to everybody else, because these flyers are typically like left on tables, and it just doesn't look as professional as she could be. So watch out for those flyers and condoms, apparently. Okay. We are now moving into chapter 3. So this was a spot that I've reserved for some of the higher emotional rants. So we'll see how this goes. Excuse me while I take a drink here. Here we go. All right. So let's talk about WordCamps. Let's talk about the format of WordCamps. So WordCamp organizers and event organizers, and this is part of my opinion piece here in this bit, so bear with me. I'd like to see more WordCamp organizers think outside the box. And what I mean by that is that basically all the WordCamps, or most of the WordCamps, especially in the US, and keep in mind I don't know about every single WordCamp out there, but I am from the US, so this is I'm coming from a US-centric point of view. They're all pretty much the same. I mean, they're all pretty much speakers talk on tracks. There could be one single track, which is rare, but it's still a thing. There's 2 tracks, 3 tracks, and there's even 4 tracks. And I think one time I took drugs and I thought I saw suddenly 5 tracks somewhere. But anyway, speakers and tracks format. But I think we've grown a little too accustomed to this format, too comfortable with it. And while it's educational, honestly, I've heard from some people behind the scenes that this event format can sometimes get a little boring. And yes, I use the word boring with a B. And that's why I think events like LoopConf and WordCamp or WP Campus, which just had its inaugural event a month or 2 ago, that's why I think these particular camps are getting popular, not because they're not WordCamps, but because they break out of this mold. But here's the thing. There's nothing that says WordCamps can't be focused on a particular area. There's nothing that says WordCamps must have tracks. WordCamps must have speakers on these tracks and so forth, and it must be done like this. There's nothing that says that. WordCamps can have different formats, and I'm surprised not many WordCamps or not many times has this been really experimented on. And it has. There are exceptions. A few camps have done this, or I should say a few cities, I guess, have done this. But nothing on even to a scale where you could deem if it was a successful event or not, in my opinion, anyway. So it just gives you something to think about. You know, are you running a WordCamp? Is things getting a little dull? Maybe there's some things you can do that kind of would mix it up, change the format a little bit, maybe not go completely away from tracks, but maybe mix it up with workshops or a particular theme for a WordCamp, maybe security, or perhaps you could have a WordCamp that focuses primarily on the networking part, or as on the same level as the educational part. And then some WordCamps, I like the idea sometimes of having a WordCamp more than one WordCamp a year, but I think this really hasn't taken off yet because we kind of need multiple organizers to have that sort of thing happen. And frankly, right now, I don't think a lot of cities have that kind of organizational capacity. But I think once we get up to that point, I think that would probably be a really good idea. So one of the examples of this is the Japanese community. If you've taken a look at what they do, lots of people pitch in. Their events are not all WordCamps. In fact, their meetups are not just speaker only. Japanese meetups in Japan sometimes have photo walks or social events, and they happen to talk about WordPress at the same time. So that seems like the idea is there ready to sprout. We just kind of need a little bit of push and a little bit of manpower to get it done. So let's talk about negative feedback as WordCamp organizers. Now, some negative feedback that we get from either people talking at the event or maybe a survey afterwards, sometimes it's a legit feedback. But when I talk with WordCamp organizers, when I visit other WordCamps and we all sit down and we all have a we'll all have a drink in a restaurant and we talk about our stories. Most of the stories and the feedback that I'm getting from organizers just make me cringe. Some of the stories that some of the feedback that organizers are getting back are just plain ridiculous. And I'll be honest, and I'll share my own story. We got feedback a couple of WordCamps ago from someone that said basically, and I am not joking, this person said, I noticed I'm giving negative feedback because I think the majority of your speakers on stage were too fat. Those exact words. And laughed about it at the time. I'm laughing about it now, but it just shows you what kind of feedback you can get from a WordCamp event. And you know what? When organizers get stressed, and organizers do get stressed about this silly feedback, they won't write a blog post about it or tweet about it, and they laugh it off, but you can see some of them are honestly stressed about it. And I have to tell these people, listen, we are not paid event planners, and this is a volunteer-based thing. So just keep that in mind when you read these weird negative feedbacks, because these people really have no right to complain, not like this, because this is a volunteer-based thing. We're providing the basic services so these people can network and be educated on, and to have that kind of feedback is just simply, it's simply off the rails. And in my experience too, a lot of the people complaining or have unreasonable feedback haven't really put any effort into the event at all. That's every single time. That's usually that. And I've seen it like that. And I think a lot of these people that are complaining don't realize that organizers, they're volunteering, they're giving up a lot of time with their friends, with their family. Organizing is pretty much a second job. And you can't have people complaining. I'm sorry, excuse me, I skipped a slide here. It's just ridiculous. And organizers really need to let that stuff go. And more often than not, I can see organizers saying they're letting it go, but not really letting it go. And then sometimes when I encounter people face to face, or I'm in a discussion with them through email, and they do make these kind of comments, I offer to have them, or I ask them, hey, would you like to volunteer to help us with these problems? I didn't offer that to the woman who said the speakers were fat. I didn't say it to her, but I have had I've had people point out problems or things that they want to see improved with speaker selection and all that. But I say, hey, would you like to volunteer? Would you like to get involved? Most of them don't get involved, not even a little bit. And a little bit of help goes a long way. But so my advice to you is that if you are in a conversation with someone and they're providing to you feedback, and if it's crazy feedback, just walk away from it. But if it is something that has some merit to it that they can help, ask them to help you, because that way you kind of gauge to see how serious that person is. Are they just complaining, or are they really truly caring about the event or whatever was wrong with the event? And that's, like I said, this won't apply to every situation, but I've done this before, and I figured I would pass that along. I mean, do I sound angry yet? Do I sound angry? No, okay, good. Just making sure. So anyway, let's talk about exit strategy, or leaving a legacy. Now, no matter how long you plan to be involved with a WordCamp or an organization, you need to think about a few things. If you left your WordCamp organization team tomorrow, or did not return next year, would that negatively impact your community? Would that negatively impact having a WordCamp next year in your city? All right, think about that, because that's what's known as a legacy. And it's something that I wasn't thinking about until I talked to Jenny Wong earlier. And she helped me appreciate that you should have a legacy. You should leave a legacy whenever you decide it's time that you can't, for whatever reason, be involved with your WordCamp or event anymore. You should either be working toward a system or have a system already in place that when you're gone, that community would still be functional. So ask yourself these questions. Are you growing your list of dependable organizers? Do you have a system in place where it doesn't rely on one person? Maybe that person is you, or it could be maybe another person. Do you have a system in place where it doesn't rely on this person to function well? Well, if you don't, then you need to work toward that goal, because everyone eventually, for one reason or another, will not be part of an organizational WordCamp team for whatever reason. So you want to ask yourself, am I leaving a legacy? Am I leaving things better or at least good as when I found it, or will it fall apart if I leave? So a lot of organizers right now, I know they don't think about this, and it's something I really think we should give to some consideration, because it's not all about you. It's about the community. And if you remove one pillar and that crumbles, then that's not a good thing. So anyway, let's move on to our final chapter. Yeah, it's the living room. I ran out of rooms, so we'll just go with it. So anyway, we're running low on time. So what I'm going to do is that I had some things to talk about sponsorships or sponsors, but you'll see those in the slides. But I'm gonna go quickly through them now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you some sponsor-related tips. There's only one or two of them here. And the first one is, watch your promises, do not sell the world. The more promises you make to a sponsor, the harder it is to keep them or to remember them. So don't go overboard. And it's something, honestly, that even Miami needs to work on. You don't have to promise the sponsors the moon and the stars. You can provide them, a list of basic things that they need to be able to be present or visible at the event for whatever level it is. In fact, I can tell you that most sponsors have told me unofficially, so I'm not going to quote anybody, but most sponsors really are not, they're mainly interested in their physical presence or how much exposures they can get. Mentioning them on Twitter, even a blog post sometimes, those are great things to offer, but those usually don't drag the sponsors in or have them coming to you. So just something to keep in mind. Make sure to reach out for sponsors as soon as your date is confirmed. That's really important. Give yourself the most amount of time. And always seem to offer, some camps forget this, but offer that affordable community sponsor ticket that's $20, $50, even $99 or whatever it is. So people can buy a ticket just to say they contributed back to the WordPress community. And it's a cheap enough ticket so smaller individual freelancers can buy it and not go broke. So general organizer tips. Here's a good one. Some things are out of your control, and that's life. You get to delegate. You should delegate. And Megan Haynes got a great quote from her. She says, delegation is the key in managing volunteer conferences. Your best is to cast a wide net and be inclusive of who you want to help, but encourage eager members to also join the associate meetup group. So your volunteers should be coming from your meetup groups. Keep that in mind well, as long as you're speakers. You'll never please everybody. So I think we've gone through this through the negative feedback, but relax, chill. Don't try to be the person that solves all the problems to every attendee. It's not going to happen. Michelle, one of the organizers of WordCamp Minneapolis, says shipped is better than perfect. And for WordCamps Go, I completely agree with that. Because if you try to do that, then you'll hit burnout, and burnout is real. And James Tryon, one of my friends, says sometimes you push yourself for the good of community, and don't over push yourself. You need to have dependable people, and to make sure every year you're training people to take your place or to take a place beside you, so you have a growing, dependable volunteer base to depend on, so you don't burn out. And sometimes, remember, WordCamps too, it's not a contest. WordCamp events do not have to be big. And this is coming from someone who organizes an 800-person WordCamp. I realize that, but WordCamps are made for your best serving your local community. So for our local community, so far, this is what works. Does not mean you need to go out and have an 800-person WordCamp. And WordCamps, and especially I think even smaller WordCamps, sometimes they're the best camps to work at, because you really get to connect with that community. You get to find out what that community really is. And you get to have very interesting conversations. I think WordCamp Jacksonville, it was the latest, smallest WordCamp I was at, and it was probably one of the better social WordCamps I've been to. And as organizers, just remember to set expectations for your attendees. These people are paying $20 or $30 a ticket. Make sure when you send out information to your attendees, what you say isn't at your event is as important as what you say is at your event. And if you've got questions about this, you can ask me in the chat room. Just remember the code of conduct. Getting out on your website is great, but make sure you train your volunteers to find out what happens when you actually, something gets reported. At WordCamp Miami, we came up with signs. I recommend signs. It doesn't have to be this verbose, but this just lets all the attendees know you're serious about it. We already talked about keynotes. I don't know why that slide's in there. We talked about proactive and getting speakers and volunteers. Here's more and more WordCamps. You got to realize some people are going to be there for the networking first and not the talks. Networking goes before, I think, is the #1 reason people go to camps nowadays. Education follows a close second. You'll hear people talk about hallway tracks. So just make sure that at your camp, if you can, make sure you have a space where people can go who are not attending the sessions, and ask yourself, what kind of networking opportunities am I providing? Something more than lunch. Try to allow for social events and after parties and various things like that. And don't forget, lots of kid camps are starting at WordCamps. Can young ones be involved in a panel or a talk? Can older ones be involved as well? Age is another part of diversity. And so finally, ask yourself why you're doing this. Are you doing WordCamps just to promote yourself first, or is it for the benefit of the community? Sadly, I've seen people involved with WordCamp Miami that are the first, that thought there was going to be a great promotional opportunity for them. And it just doesn't work like that. Eventually, people like that will drop out of the organizational roles. So anyway, finally, just a few tips to help other organizers. Sometimes if you're at another conference, let organizers know that you have any extra equipment with you. Sometimes that's a really great thing for other organizers to help out. And then if you're doing something cool, open source the crap out of it and share it. So like if you're creating something like Miami has created like Uno cards, and Minneapolis has created coloring books, and we've created happiness bars in the happiness bar. We've put these designs in GitHub so other WordCamps can use them. So share what you've made. And on that same note, also be open about your budget planning and sharing your contacts. Vendor contacts are hard to find. You can hang out in WordPress Slack and share what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of times being open about your budget also helps other WordCamps as well. So anyway, you can also help promote other WordCamps. And yes, I get a plug. I get one plug per WordSesh session. You can go to that, conferencia.io/events, to see all the WordCamps in one easy chart. But, other WordCamps, help promote them, especially if they're local in your area. And then last slide, I promise, be a WordCamp mentor. We desperately need WordCamp mentors, and there are people that are kind of like big brothers, and you can touch base every 2 weeks with a new mentorship, or a new WordCamp that needs some guiding. Deputies that monitor WordCamp check in frequently. They also give them tools and decisions and pass along helpful instructions and experiences. So I'm a WordCamp mentor, and you can be a WordCamp mentor too. Just reach out to Andrea. Like I said, they're really looking for more mentors, and we need them as we get more WordCamps. So anyway, I'm going to post my slides. Here's some great links, by the way. Do want you to look at a lot of these, some of these, especially on make.wordpress.org, should be getting more exposure to WordCamp organizers, and they're not. So really should take a look at the community team Slacks and the events and better tools for local events links especially. So I want to thank Aaron, Jenny, Morton, Brad, James, Michelle, Megan, Alex, and Ryan for their help. And that is my presentation. I will post my slides up shortly, and thank you for listening. I will have, I'll take questions in the chat room since my time is up. Thank you.